All right, good morning. I am calling to order the June 14th meeting of the Board of Directors of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Government. Before we call to order and establish a quorum, we're going to have a moment of silence for Stephanie Fortune, a Colorado Springs City Council member who passed away in a couple days ago. So would you join me in a moment of silence, please? Thank you very much. And if there was anybody that wanted to say anything about Stephanie, now would be the appropriate time to do so. Okay. If not, we will,
I will.
I'm sorry.
I will.
Oh, Yolanda, I'm sorry. I didn't see you over there. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, actually, I think she just passed away yesterday in the morning.
Okay.
And we received the news. I received it first at the dais, so that was really tough. So Stephanie worked with us on council. She filled in Richard Scorman's seat in District 3, and she worked hard and fast, but half of that time she worked virtually and still, accomplished a lot of work virtually as she was going through treatments. And she was a trooper. She just kept responding to constituents and working virtually and doing the best that she could. And I think she lost that battle, but I just think it's really important to honor her. And it's hard to lose a colleague that you've been working with. So Stephanie was known to, I just really got to know her recently, but Keisha was really known throughout the community a lot. I don't know if anybody here worked with her besides Dave. But anyway, we're really sad.
And
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, yeah.
Yeah.
So Dave Donaldson, councilman, and I'm just going to add on to some of what Yolanda had to say. And when Stephanie was appointed, City Council appointed her when Richard had stepped down, and it was a tough process. It was a difficult process. Her appointment, there was some controversy, and she was very gracious, through that, and she really was a good example of taking the high road. And then when she served on council for that year, approximately a year, I think she won over a lot of people that had concerns because she hadn't lived in the district that long, and she really showed that she addressed the citizens' concern. The West Side Community Center, she really focused on trying to solve that problem. And she was a real woman of faith, and she was diagnosed with leukemia. Like Yolanda said, she continued to serve the last few months until the election in April, and did it remotely while undergoing treatment. It really set a heck of an example for the rest of us, and even at the end, again, strong faith was really very inspiring for most of us. But for those of us on council, we're going to really miss her. There will be some ceremonies and services coming up, but thank you for taking the moment of silence, for taking this moment of silence. And Stephanie, she had a big impact before coming to council. She was the chief of staff for Jane Norton, the lieutenant governor under Governor Bill Owens. She worked for one of the presidents. She did lots of things, City of Champions, other things she was deeply involved in. She's received tributes from our current mayor and our previous mayor. So very sad news, and we will miss her.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I will. This is Holly Williams. I was just going to say, we honored her yesterday at our county commission meeting, and I remember a time 20 years ago when we we're all on a chamber trip together, and I think it was Amy Lathan, Stephanie, and Sandra Dameron and me in the back of a taxi. And all of us realized that the husbands had the wallets and we had no way to pay the taxi fare. And I think the taxi cab almost dropped us off right there and then on the spot. So it was a rather wild trip. And so we had a very good time, but she did a lot of good for our community as the government affairs representative at the Chamber of Commerce. And also as UCCS, working with Pam Shockley-Zalabek. So she'll be greatly missed.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone online have a hand raised? No. Okay, thank you everyone for your comments and
Turn on your mic. Oh, it is. Okay.
would you like me to speak up?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't get told that very often. Okay, we need to establish a quorum. Andy?
We need 7 for a quorum, and I visually see that we've got many more than 7 in the room and a handful online. But I would suggest maybe why don't we go around the room and do introductions? We have one new board member from the city of Colorado Springs, so that'll give Councilmember Crow Iverson a chance to meet the rest of you. And I know we've got a new council member from the city of Victor online as well who's joining. So why don't we go around and do introductions?
Okay, I'll start to my left here.
Nick Elsner, first vice chair and Park County Commissioner.
And Dave Donaldson, Councilman, Colorado Springs.
Andy Gunning, PPACG.
John Graham, Mayor, City of Manitou Springs.
Roland Gardine, Mayor Pro Tem of Town of Callahan.
Todd Dixon, Mayor, Green Mountain Falls.
Lynette Crow Iverson, Pro Tem, at-large City Council, Colorado Springs.
Yoon Han with the CDOT, sitting in for Shane Ferguson.
Jeff Bond, representing Space Base Delta One.
Cheryl Richards, PPACG Office Manager.
Yolanda?
And then
Hi, Yolanda, I'm the city council.
Okay.
Holly Williams, El Paso County Commissioner, and I know that we might have Commissioner, okay, so Commissioner Vanderwerf, as he said multiple times, has his son's wedding this weekend. So he is not here. And Commissioner Bremer may have a swim meet for her son. And we were going to try and send our alternates, but I do not see them present yet. Thank you.
All right, so I have elected officials online. I have Buck is the new one. Hi, welcome. Can you introduce
Thank you.
yourself?
I'm Buck Hake, City Council, Victor.
Okay, and Jeff Mosier? Okay,
Yep,
Jeff was on.
Jeff Mosier, representing the city of Cripple Creek. I'm the Special Projects Director.
Okay, Kelly Case?
Hi, Kelly Case, Mayor Pro Tem Woodland Park. Good to see you all this morning.
Mitch LeKind?
Mitch LeKind, Mayor of Monument.
Do you have any other elected officials online?
I do, actually. Laura Cronick, council member. She's
Okay, well, welcome, Laura. And I see that we also have Colonel Warner from the Air Force.
Yes, Colonel Dan Warner. I'm the new Vice Commander of the 10th Air Base Wing here at the Air Force Academy. And Colonel Reinhardt has retired, so still hanging around the Colorado Springs area if you see her around.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And any other military or elected officials online? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to the next item, which is item 2, agenda approval. What would the board like to do with that?
Yolanda, move to approve the agenda.
Second, John Graham.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Keep it quiet. No. All righty. Item number 3, public comments and presentations. Item A, public comments can be made before, during the meeting. Public comments may be limited to 3 minutes and can be done at the meeting location or remotely. Do we have anyone in the audience for something that's not on the agenda under public comment? Anyone online or receive any emails?
So, Madam Chair, I'll ask anyone who's online who would wish to make a public comment to raise their hand. While we're waiting for that, we did not receive any advance requests for public comment in the email. And seeing no hands raised, I think we can continue.
All right, thank you very much. That takes them on at item 3B, military installation reports. And we know we have Colonel Warner online.
Great, thank you. Here at the Air Force Academy, as most of the community know, we had graduation 2 weeks ago where we successfully launched 921 graduates out into both the United States Air Force and Space Force, with a few cross commissioning into some of the other branches, but mostly airmen and guardians going out there to lead folks. Additionally, coming up, the next big heavy lift for the Air Force Academy is in processing day, which is June 28th. I believe I've got that one correct. Where we're going to be welcoming in an estimated 1,135 appointees here at the Air Force Academy for the class of 2027, where they'll undergo the rigorous 4-year curriculum as they're trained to become future airmen and guardian leaders in the greatest air and space force that we have. Apart from that, it's kind of business as usual here at the Air Force Academy. We do have several senior leaders swapping out. So the vice superintendent will be swapping out, as well as the commandant position. And then here at the 10th Air Base Wing, providing all the support to the installation is pretty significant. Myself, I'm new here, as well as we're going to be welcoming in Colonel Glisson as the new Air Base Wing commander here shortly. We have a new chief, command chief, Chief Shauna Boom, as well as a new mission support group commander, Colonel Chio Stallworth, will be having his change of command tomorrow. So a lot in flux right now. We're all excited to continue on the part of the Air Force Academy mission, and look forward to working with you all in the local community. If you have any questions, I'm standing by.
Did he say that class of 2027, 28?
2027, that'll be the class that's entering in. So yeah, as a class of 03, I'm feeling a little bit old here. Or 2003.
Some of us could probably go a little bit further back than 03.
No, very good. Yeah, but if you see them walking around in service dress, just give them some words of encouragement as you see them out there and about in the community.
Yeah, as they look 12 years old, huh? All right. Well, thank you so much for that report, and good luck with the new recruits coming in. All right, we have Jeff Bond.
Thank you, Madam Board and the Chair. At Peterson, the Eastgate project continues. We still anticipate a mid to late July completion on the access to the east side of Peterson off of Mark Shuffle. Our explosive ordnance disposal team received some training on a state-of-the-art EOD robot that will be placed into service soon when all members are trained. The new robots can lift more. It has better cameras. It can turn itself over if it's tipped over, and it has better dexterity controls for the operator. So this should be a bonus to the community, as our EOD does support in some capacities in the Pikes Peak region. Peterson Space Force Base was selected to host the 2023 Department of the Air Force Emergency Management Worldwide Conference. This will be August 21st to the 24th, and there'll be approximately 200 senior emergency management leaders from around the Air Force attending here. On June 22nd, we do plan to support the Colorado 94 Safety Improvement Ribbon Cutting Project, commemorating the completion of the Highway 94 project out to Schriever. And I would like to thank the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments and the Colorado Department of Transportation for their leadership in making this happen. It's been a long road, and it'll be a safer one as well. Pending any questions, that's all I have to report.
Okay, any questions for Jeff or Air Force? And do we have anybody else online? Nobody else online. Okay. All right, look forward to that July finish of that project out there. That's really important. Thank you very much. That takes us on to item 3C, World Elder Abuse Awareness Day Proclamation. Jody Barker and team.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair and Board of Directors. I'm pleased to share that this week is, and specifically tomorrow, is annually recognized as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. And we're asking the board to sign on to a proclamation for such. The team has actually spread out this year's events. Instead of doing one single day event, they're doing things across the week. So I've asked Lori, our regional ombudsman, to share a little bit about that before I read the ombudsman. But I want you to know who the ombudsman team is for Region 4. As you know, we have long-term care communities in El Paso County as well as Teller County. So behind me, and you guys are hiding here. So we have Lori McGinnis, like I mentioned. She is our regional, that's our lead. She's the boss of the team. We have Robin Guthrie, Marky Garcia Miller, and Kathy Reyes. And so we're very pleased to have this team to support those older adults who live in long-term care and be their voice. So just a moment here, ask Lori to share a little bit about what they've been doing this week.
Hi, and before I start, I just want to take a moment and recognize that in the back of the room, we have folks from Adult Protective Services here, and I appreciate their attendance to this and the work that they do helping some of our most vulnerable citizens in our community is so appreciated. So I just wanted to recognize that they are here in the back of the room. So one of the committees in our community is the Pikes Peak Elder Abuse Coalition. And as part of that coalition, we have worked together the last several years on World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. This year, we decided to take the work on the road. So yesterday morning, we started off at the county commissioners meeting for the signing of the proclamation, where we heard some very touching stories of family experiences. Then we went over to Monument and had an event over there. And Kent Matthews from the Area Agency on Aging led that discussion. From there, we went to Callahan and had a lively discussion out there, which ended with some of their citizens, I think, will be getting some support from that discussion. And that was led by Dr. Sherry Gibson, and she will be following up with some of the citizens to provide some ongoing supports. And she's a psychologist who specializes in working with elders in our community and with abuse and neglect. So that was yesterday. And then tomorrow, Rosemary from the Alzheimer's Association is doing an event as part of this group of that working on World Elder Abuse at the southeast part of town. And then later in the week, Melissa Martz from the Area Agency on Aging and Dr. Sherry Gibson again will be going to Fairplay for an event up there. Then on the 28th, we're doing this a little bit later in the month to give the team time to work on this. We will be doing an event here at Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments for residents and family members and others concerned with abuse and neglect in long-term care facilities, so nursing homes and assisted living. So that is what we've been working on. I am so proud to work at the Area Agency on Aging and work for an organization that supports this important work that we do. And I am so pleased and thankful for the support of the board as well. So thank you.
No, you have to wait. We still have a photo. So some of you may have heard that. Can we sit down now? No, we will. We are going to ask for a photo opportunity here. So hang out with me for a moment. So again, just to reiterate the thanks to the board of directors. As you know, last year we held 2 long-term care roundtables to bring the issues that really came forth during the time of COVID in long-term care. And they weren't caused by COVID. They just came to the forefront because of COVID. And so Lori and her team have worked along with APS and others all the way up to the state level to bring that awareness to our community. And we thank you for your involvement there. So I just want to go ahead and read this resolution into the record, Madam Chair, and then we'll ask for a vote and the photo, if I may. Resolution by the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments Board of Directors recognizing June 2023 as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day proclamation. Whereas older adults deserve to be treated with respect and dignity to enable them to serve as leaders, mentors, volunteers, and vital participating members of our communities. And whereas in 2006, the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, in support of the United Nations International Plan of Action, proclaimed a day to recognize the significance of elder abuse as a public health and human rights issue. And whereas 2023 marks the 17th annual World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, its recognition will promote a better understanding of abuse and neglect of older adults. And whereas the National Center on Elder Abuse and the Pikes Peak Elder Abuse Coalition, in conjunction with Pikes Peak Elder Justice Center, recognize the importance of taking action to raise awareness, prevent, and address elder abuse. And whereas, as our population lives longer, we are presented with an opportunity to think about our collective needs and future as a nation. Whereas ageism and social isolation are major causes of elder abuse in the United States, and whereas recognizing that it is up to all of us to ensure that proper social structures exist so people can retain community and societal connections, reducing the likelihood of abuse. And whereas where there is justice, there can be no abuse. Therefore, NCEA urges all people to restore justice by honoring older adults. Whereas joining us in our engaging and empowering movement and putting an end to abuse. Now be it therefore resolved, the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments do hereby proclaim June 15, 2023 as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and encourage all of our communities to recognize and celebrate older adults and their ongoing contributions to the success and vitality of our country. Resolved, approved, and adopted by the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments this 14th day of June, 2023 at Colorado Springs, Colorado. Signed by Mayor Sharon Thompson, Chair, and attested by Council Member Dave Donaldson as Board Secretary. We would ask for your vote to move forward with this proclamation, Mayor Thompson.
Okay, we have that on the floor. What would the board like to do?
I move approval and adoption. John Graham.
I second it. Roland Gardine, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, is there any discussion?
One question, should
Yeah.
we add the 15th up into the title? Right now it just says June 2023.
It was done because of our, while World Elder Abuse Awareness Day is specifically recognized on June 15th, we have spread our events across the month.
Okay, never mind.
Thank you for that. Good eye.
All right, it kind of threw me a little bit too, yeah. All right,
Hey,
any other
Madam Chair.
discussion?
Yeah, just a question for Jody. Jody, is the, I know we have events through the month and it recognizes World Elder Abuse Day. Is it only done as a world event? I mean, is that's what we do this with, or there's nothing state specific or United States specific?
I'm not sure that there's something specifically proclaimed by the state of Colorado, but there are events going on all across the state right now, along this same vein.
I'm just trying to think of if we do anything else that's like world, whatever that is.
Yeah,
They're just-
this was, yes, this
Okay.
was a larger, higher level proclamation or event that we recognize and follow across the United States.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just have a comment.
Okay.
So probably the last thing you need this morning is a story, but I'll tell two stories. And one is that there is the elder abuse that you see of and hear of in the hospitals and the Medicare and Medicaid facilities. My parents grew up Depression era, very frugal, very good with their finances. And then as they got older, and you will, if you read scientific research, the first part of your brain that goes is your ability to do financial judgment. And as they got older, I got a call from my sister one day in 2007 that my mom had been giving all of our money away to the foreign lottery in Jamaica. These are people that prey on adults, moms, dads who are home alone during the daytime. They call them. They tell them they have won the foreign lottery, but they have to keep it hush hush, really secret. They're working with the IRS to pay the taxes, and if you just pay the taxes, you'll be a billionaire. Now, every adult by that point in time wants to leave a lot of money to their kids. Well, that money's saved up actually by the adults in case they have to go into a Medicaid or a Medicare facility when they get older. It's not really for us kids, just to put that straight. So remember that your parents are saving up money for their elder care first and not for when they die for an inheritance. So as I've talked with other people about this, I found out there's another little more subtle type of financial abuse. As a friend had to take over her mom and dad's finances and found out that there were books of checks, $25 to the Republican Party, the Democrat Party, because she was afraid she would get audited if she didn't send those checks in to the national committees, and it occurs by both parties. And then also checks to every nonprofit, bless all of our nonprofits in town, national nonprofits. And it was just anyone who asked got $25. And so you have to realize as you come up into a certain age, it's really worthwhile to take the time to sit down with your parents and tell them it does happen. I have people who say, oh, it'll never happen to my mom or dad. It happens. Sit down and say, which one of us do you trust to have on your checking account? Do we need to get a conservator at a certain age? Because it'll happen and the rug will be pulled out from underneath you before you ever realize it. And it was a long 10 years until my mom passed away, and she kept thinking until the day she died she had won that. And it was a very long 10 years to handle that situation. So just please be aware that these situations do occur.
Right, thank you. Roland?
Mayor Pro Tem Callahan, yesterday, this meeting we had with these people really identified the financial and the different aspects and age periods that the people, that lived and how their characteristics are. But in our community, we have a lot of aging people that like they're pretty withdrawn. They don't want people in their business. And then they also, if they have a problem, they feel self-conscious and ashamed if there isn't a financial person in their trust is actually damaging them. And then we also found out that a few other things that are going to be addressed in our community, but communication from us, the people, we need to let these people know that they have they're not alone, that they can actually come to us and then actually get some kind of support. Okay, but that was real something I learned yesterday in detail, and the doctor that presented this thing, she's very forthright and she's very knowledgeable, and also then she's a psychologist that can actually address problems in a more eloquent way than I can. Okay, but I really appreciate what happened yesterday, but we as a group, we need to also take an active role in this, not just sit back and let it happen.
Thank you. Is there anyone online with a hand raised? No. Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, I think we had a motion in a second already, correct? And then we went to discussion. Okay. All righty. All in favor, say aye.
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 Just dare somebody to oppose this.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jared will pop up for a photograph, and then we'll move on.
Okay, anybody who'd like to be on the photo, come on down. Todd, we understand. All right, let's see. I understand that Commissioner Gonzalez is online now and is an alternate for the county. Welcome, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Hi, thank you.
Uh-oh, there seems to be just some discussion on if we should let him into the meeting or not. Okay. All right. All
He's a
righty.
good guy.
Takes us on to item 4, consent agenda items. What would council like to do with items A, B, and C? Board, sorry.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for consent items A, B, and C. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. Not opposed. That was
Oh.
aye.
Okay, all righty. Kate takes down to action 5A, 2022 fiscal audit presentation. Carol McBroom. Welcome, Carol.
Good morning, Carol McBroom, Finance Director, PPACG. Our auditor, Stockman Cash Ryan, completed the 2022 fiscal audit. And in the packet, you will find the management letter, the draft management letter, and the draft fiscal audit. We do have representatives from Stockman Cash here today. We have Louis Malloy, who is the audit manager, and we have Steve Hochstetter, who is the audit partner. They'll come up and talk about the audit in just a minute. They did bring extra hard copies of the draft audit if anybody needs it. Cheryl's got them over on with her. So once the presentation is complete, we will be recommending that you approve both the management letter and the fiscal audit. And spoiler alert, we did get a clean audit, but Steve is going to come up and talk more. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Steve Hochstetter. As Carol said, I'm one of the partners with the firm Stockman Cash Ryan & Company, the firm you've engaged to perform the audit, and we appreciate the opportunity to work with PPACG. With me is Louis Malloy. Louis is one of our audit managers, and we have 2 reports to go through with you. One is what we refer to as a governance letter. Louis will walk you through that, and then I'll go through the draft of the report itself. So, Louis.
Good morning, everyone. So I'll be covering the 3-page governance letter, which is basically our required communication to those charged with governance. And it kind of briefly goes over how the audit went overall. So the first paragraph just simply states that we have audited the financial statements of Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments for the year ended December 31, 2022. The first paragraph on a significant audit matter discusses management's responsibility for the accounting policies used. And these are described in note 1 of the financial statements. We noted no new accounting policies were adopted or changed during the year. The second paragraph discusses estimates, which all financial statements have, and it lists in the middle of the paragraph, the second to last paragraph, the 3 most sensitive estimates, which are the useful lives of capital and other non-current assets, collectability of grants and accounts receivable, and potential refunds of disallowed costs related to government grants. And during the course of our audit, we evaluated these estimates and determined that they were reasonable. Turning to page 2, the top 3 section discusses whether there were any difficulties encountered, misstatements identified, or disagreements we had with management during the course of the audit. And we're happy to say that we had no such issues and the audit went swimmingly. In the middle of the page is management representations. That simply states at the completion of this audit, we will have management sign a representation letter, basically confirming their responsibility for these financial statements. And that's when that line will be filled in. The last 2 paragraphs on this page states that we are not aware of management consulting with other accountants, kind of like opinion shopping if they disagree with us on something. And then we also discuss a variety of matters with management throughout the course of the year, and our responses to those questions were not a condition to our retention. Turning to the last page, the other matters sections. The first paragraph states that the management's discussion and analysis and the budgetary comparison schedules are required information and supplements the basic financial statements. And we did not audit these schedules, but we apply limited and specific audit procedures, and therefore we don't express an opinion on them. And finally, we compared and reconciled the schedule of expenditures of federal awards that's related to federal award grants you received and the amounts you expended. And we verified that the underlying accounting records and determined that it was appropriate and complete in relation to the financial statements as a whole. And that pretty much summarizes the governance letter. So I'll turn it over to Steve.
Thanks, Louis. So I think really the takeaway from the governance letter is really three things. One is the audit went very well. We had excellent cooperation from management. Then I think the third one that, and really maybe is most important, as part of our audit, we did not have any audit adjustments. It's not uncommon for auditors to come in, identify errors, and propose adjustments. The lack of audit adjustments, I think, speaks to the quality of your accounting staff and the job that department does. I think it also means that the financial information you receive on a monthly basis is accurate and reliable to base financial decisions on. So Carol said we have like 10, 15 minutes here on your agenda. So I'm going to go through the draft of the report at a very high level, really aimed at not going through the information, more telling you what is in this packet. So turning to the first page after the table of contents is titled Independent Auditor's Report. And this is our report on your financial statements. And up at the top, the second paragraph, we state, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the governmental activities in each major fund of PPACG. That's the highest level of assurance that CPAs or accounting firms give on financial statements. So as a board, it's what you want to hear from the auditors. And as Carol said, it's also what's referred to as the clean opinion or the unmodified opinion. This report goes on just to outline what is the basis for our opinion, and that's performing the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and government auditing standards. Goes on to discuss management's responsibilities, our responsibilities, points out that there's some supplemental information in the reporting package, and addresses our responsibilities and management's responsibilities for that supplemental information. Beginning on page 4, it's titled Management's Discussion and Analysis. This is pages 4 through 7, and it really is what the title says. It's management's discussion of the financial results for the year. So it's a good overview. I won't walk you through it other than, like I said, point out that it's there. The basic financial statements start on page 8. Pages 8 and 9 are what are referred to as government-wide financial statements. Page 8 shows all of the assets of the organization, the liabilities, and the net assets or net position. You can see the net position at the bottom of this page is $2,890,000. It's an increase of about $155,000 over the prior year. It's an increase as a result of the, to use for-profit language, the net income that the organization had. And that's reflected on the next page. Page 9 is a statement of activities. Page 9 is also what's referred to as a government-wide financial statement, shows all the revenues and expenses. If you go to the third line from the bottom, you can see that change in net position of about $155,000. Very comparable to the prior year. Most, you're generally operating from a standpoint of near break even. Your revenues and expenses tend to generally offset each other. Last year, you had a change in net position of $145,000. As I said, this year, $154,000. Beginning on page 10 and over to pages 10 through 13, what are referred to as government-wide financial statements or fund financial statements. It's really showing similar information that we just looked at on pages 8 and 9 from a different perspective. Moving over to page 14, pages 14 through 20 are the notes to the financial statements. The notes to the financial statements provide additional information to support the financial statement. So again, just additional information available to you. If we jump over to page 21, is a supplemental schedule, and this is a schedule of revenues and expenditures compared to budget. And if you look at the last 3 columns, you can see that the second numerical column is your budget. The third numerical column is the actual, and the last numerical column is the variance or the difference. And just looking at some of these, your total revenues were $4.2 million less than budgeted, primarily related to receiving fewer federal grants than you had anticipated. If you jump down to the expenditures, 2/3 of the way down that last numerical column again, you can see you spent $4.4 million less than budgeted as a result of receiving fewer funds than expected. So the net impact is you budgeted a break even, revenues and expenses equaling each other. You had $155,000 surplus or net income, which is that positive budget variance in that last column. We flip over to page 22. Page 22 is a schedule of expenditure of federal awards. This lists out the federal funds that that you received. We as auditors have to follow some very specific guidance in terms of what we select to audit. And this year, the programs that we selected to audit is that aging cluster, that first 4 or 5 lines at the top, which total $3.1 million. So later on in the report, when we talk about major programs that we tested, these are the programs that we tested. Moving over to page 20, it's not numbered, but 24. Pages 24 and 25, as it's titled, is our report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other financial matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. This report really states what you would want it to state. We did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls over financial reporting or any instances of non-compliance. So while we don't specifically express an opinion, the lack of a finding is what you want to see. Moving on to page 26 and 27, this is our report on compliance for each major program that we tested and internal controls over compliance required by uniform guidance. Uniform guidance is the guidance that we have to follow in performing our audit. And this one does start out with an opinion. And if you go to the second page, or I'm sorry, the second paragraph on this page, where it states, in our opinion, PPACG complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above that are that could have a direct and material impact for each of its major federal programs. So those would be that aging cluster that I referred to earlier. Moving over to the next page, page 27 at the bottom, discusses reporting on internal controls over compliance. Again, we did not identify any deficiencies, so the report is stating what you would want it to be. And moving over to page 29 is really a summary of everything I just went through. Starting at the top, the financial statements indicates we express the unmodified opinion or the clean opinion. Internal control over financial reporting. You can see the boxes marked are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies identified. Same with reporting over federal awards, what I just talked about in terms of no instances of non-compliance. And then item 3 under federal awards, any findings disclosed? No, there are none. Then it points out what the major program is. The organization qualified as a low-risk auditee is pointed out in number 6. You qualify as a low-risk auditee by not having findings in prior years. Part of the significance of that is when you do have findings, we're required to increase the scope of our audit. So lack of findings is a positive thing for 2 reasons. One is you're complying with your grant requirements. Secondly, saves you money in the cost of an audit, because if you're a high-risk auditee, instead of testing 20% of your federal awards, we have to test 40%. So that's fairly significant. You know, one of the things we have to do as CPAs is take continuing professional education. A number of years ago, I took this class that was taught by one of the departments of the Office of Inspector General. And this person made the comment that if you don't have a finding, you haven't done enough work. And I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but I think it does point out kind of recognizes that there are a lot of compliance requirements that you're required to follow. And not having findings, I think, is significant. And again, just speaks to the compliance environment that you have in place. So I don't know if I stayed within 10, 15 minutes. I think pretty close. Anyone have any questions?
Just a general question. How long did it take to do the audit?
Louis, you were out here for a couple of weeks with 2 or 3 people on the engagement.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
I know how long it takes for my little town to go through an audit. I was just curious.
how a better organization.
Yeah. We, most of our work is done on site, call it out, field work, and yeah, we're scheduled to be out here for a couple of weeks with 2 to 3 people over that course of the 2-week period.
Okay, any other questions? Anybody online have a hand raised? Okay. What would the board like to do with this?
Well, I would just like to thank Carol for keeping our books clean. And
I was gonna do.
yeah, move approval of the audit. I guess we move approval of it.
And second, Councilman Donaldson.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Madam Chair, I'll just mention, just to echo Commissioner Williams's comment, we have a small but mighty team between Carol and Noemi and Ruda, and it's sort of complicated with a lot of federal grants, a lot of state grants, and then other dollars that we have to manage. And, we make mistakes. We have, 36 to 38 employees, and there's a lot of contracting we have to do and pass through funds and things like that. But when we make mistakes, we fix it, and it's good. But I think we have a really good process in place and good controls and just a really good team that's there to help us administer a lot of really complicated programs that cover a pretty wide span between aging and transportation and environmental and so forth. So really appreciate their support and appreciate your support of their good work.
Yeah, well, congratulations on the clean report and nothing to fix. So congratulations to everybody who's worked on this. Thank you. And the whole
Sarah,
team. Yeah.
If I may, this is Kelly,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem at Woodland Park. As a former finance director for the city of Woodland Park for 17 years and a former auditor, I just want to comment and commend the staff of PPACG. Fine work, and with all the grants that you manage and all of that, it's astounding that that small staff does such a great job. So anyway, I just wanted to make those comments and acknowledge how excellent they are. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, any last chance for comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, congratulations and thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, that takes us on to action item 5B, Title VI Plan Administrative Update, Danelle Miller and Laura Cruz.
Good morning, Madam Chair and fellow board members. I really appreciate the opportunity this morning to kind of talk through some things that we just talked about, the audit. Now we're talking about other things that keep the wheels turning here at PPACG. So bringing before you today is some updates to our Title VI plan, which is a requirement of the Federal Transit Administration and FHWA, so the Federal Highway Administration. And these are federal requirements that started way back in, I think, 1964. So we periodically have to update our Title VI plan to align with changes to the census, as well as more recently, since we took on the Federal Transit Administration 5310 program, which is funding for enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities. So PPACG is a direct recipient of those funds from FTA. And so with that comes different requirements. So we actually have subrecipients that we have to monitor their Title VI plans, as well as their implementation of that. So, and we work really closely with them. I've had several emails over the past couple of weeks back and forth with our subrecipients, trying to help them with some of the training opportunities that may be beneficial as there's been turnover in staff over the past couple of years with their Title VI folks. So last year, we actually brought to you about this time a supplement to add to our Title VI plan, which was basically the policies and procedures that PPACG will follow in order to monitor and assist our subrecipients. And so with that, though, because of the cycle of things, we now have to bring before the board our updated fully updated Title VI plan for you guys to review and adopt so that we can continue to move forward with our Title VI activities and new landscape from the census, looking at our different populations that are in our area and working out a plan to make sure we're connecting with them. And so bringing before you today is in your packet some highlighted changes to the Title VI plan to follow the federal requirements. As you know, that we had a census that occurred in 2020, and that census impacted the maps and kind of the landscape of what we needed to include in our LEP plans. And LEP means limited English proficiency. So you will see that change as well as the supplement that we included and you guys adopted last year. The difference you will see in our plan in particular is we also included a report that shows that our subrecipients have not had any Title VI findings within their organizations, which is great. That means that they are following their plans, as well as we haven't had any what's called cited facilities. So PPACG, we're not a transit provider, direct transit provider ourselves, but we have to report that we haven't gone through a process of building a facility for transit as an organization. So it's just a requirement with FTA that we call that out. So you'll see that report as well as in the core report, landscape for LEP. In particular, we went ahead and updated the maps, and these maps show the concentrations of minority populations in our area. And typically with the census, we get direct census block data that has percentages of minority populations in a specific census block. But this new census is taking a different approach where it's looking at not percentages, but percentiles. We had great questions about that in our board workshop. So wanted to kind of go through what that means when you're looking at these maps. So if you can kind of think about the difference between percentage and percentiles, think about standardized testing, right? So standardized testing, you actually have like a median that individuals have tested at. So say, for instance, the median for a standardized test is 87%, right? And so that's the overarching median. And so looking at it from a percentile perspective, if I am at 82%, so maybe I am in the 80% or 90% percentile of that median of 87%. So I hope that kind of explains it. And from the picture perspective of each one of these maps, the darker colors is the higher concentration of that minority population in our area. So I hope that helps kind of explain it a little more for those had questions around that and great questions around that. So we were just following the new census methodology, which helps us kind of align our documents and our planning efforts moving forward with the new normal for the census. Is there any questions around this?
I was one of the people in the pre-meeting
Yeah.
that brought it up. I think I find the percentile percentages extremely confusing. And I think when people look at these maps, it's going to take some explanation. Personally, I just don't like it when you have to draw a picture to explain a map.
Yeah.
And I think that's a little crazy in the way it was reporting. So when you look at one of them, you might say, oh, I have the 80th percentage of something is what you're going to think. And you have to say to yourself, I don't know what the percentage is because I might only have 16% of that population And then I have to, in my mind, go, okay, I have 16% of that population, and where does that 16% live in this percentile? So I think we're gonna have a lot of questions from people trying to use these maps, and I think we really need to be prepared with some very simple explanations for them to use them, because I think it's confusing.
Should we call on Will? I think he had a really good analogy for comparing this with test scores, standardized test scores. I'm sure he appreciated getting called on out of the blue, but yeah, just maybe that's a good example for comparison.
So just a point of clarification, we have percentages, but that's just not the way that the EPA and their environmental justice screening tool that they've set up likes to report it. And we wanted to make sure that we were in compliance with the new federal standards for EJ reporting. So that's why we're reporting this in percentiles. And the purpose of using percentiles is so you look at the map and you can get an idea of where you have higher concentrations. But if you're going to call something a higher concentration, it's higher than what? We might have, in this case, for limited English proficiency, a population where it's only 4% of the population in that block group is of limited English proficiency. Well, is that high? How high? Is that something that is average? Well, you have to compare it to something. So what we've done is we've used the federal guidelines to compare that against the universal averages around the state, and then say, okay, within our MPO, if you are at 4%, that actually might put you, and in this case, it puts you within the 80 percentile. In other words, if you have 4% limited English proficiency within this area, well, that means your population with limited English proficiency is higher than 80% of all the other areas in the state. And so if we break it down and show you just the percentages, that kind of actually loses a little bit of meaning because you don't know, well, what's high. And so breaking it on the percentile, we're just showing you if you're in the top 90%, that means for that metric, it's higher than 90% of all the other state. If you're in the top 80th percentile, it means you're higher than 80% in that metric across the state compared to everybody else. If you're below 50%, well, you're pretty much at the median or the average value or below. So we really just wanted to come up with something that wasn't meant to be confusing, but adheres to the federal guidelines that were put out by the EPA for environmental justice reporting standards. Again, that brings us in alignment with a host of other factors that use the same standards when it comes to funding, grants reporting, and aligning our data with federal data. And by reporting the percentile, what we're really trying to focus on with the map is if you see the higher percentile, you're just higher than that percentage, right, of the rest of the state. So like Andy brought up is if anybody's familiar with standardized testing, if you have kids in school and they come back and they get the report and they say, hey, your child is at the 80th percentile in math. Well, that doesn't really mean your kid made 80% on the test. Maybe your kid scored 90% on the test, but you know, your kid's going to school with a bunch of math geniuses. And so even though they got an A on that test, they're really only better than 80% of the other kids, right? And so by reporting the percentile, again, we're just trying to show that compared to everybody else, you're in the top, again, 20%, 10%, 5% of whatever that value is across the state. Yes.
Yeah, that helps. That helps a lot, I think. Oh, thank you.
I have a real, okay, the demographic index
Yes.
says a percentage of low income plus percentage of people of color divided by 2. And then for the explanation, the census block group has a low income and indicator value of 25% and people of color indicator value of 75%. I have a problem with that.
Okay.
A lot of the people in El Paso County and stuff like that, if they're a low income, that does not mean that they're a person of color or a race.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's a higher percentage than 25%.
Okay, I'm sorry. What's the question?
The question is that I don't see how that, in fairness, how that's calibrated. That does not seem to be right.
Okay, so we don't calculate that index. Again, that comes from the EPA and their environmental justice tool. So that's something that they've come up with to put together. And that's just supposed to be one component for consideration amongst all the other values that they've shown, such as the percentiles, again, of limited English proficiency, persons of color, and the other factors that are in
That
there.
one component seemed to be flawed.
So
Maybe more components involved, but that one component seemed to fly.
yeah, they were trying to come up with effectively one index to try and illustrate a combination of multiple factors and then do it in a way that's normalized for population. So that's how they've calculated that. But again, that's just the one factor for consideration. It's not the entirety. This was done at the federal level. Right, so it's using our local population and those census statistics, but that is not an index that we've calculated or have control over. That was calculated at the federal level.
The problem there, Roland, is you're trying to understand the federal government.
Well, that's,
Which just doesn't happen very easily.
and that's part of the challenge, and kind of gets to the previous item when we had the auditors. We get a lot of federal grants, whether it's for aging or transportation or Department of Defense for our military planning. And it comes with strings attached, and we do have to comply with the environmental justice requirements like we have since 1964, and they get updated periodically, and we're just dealing with the latest set of updates for our FTA and other grants that we're administering. So trying to take federal requirements and make them work at the local context is, it's a little bit of a challenge.
Right, so I understand I think I understand your question is, okay, how does this really reflect, right, your area? And I could say that unfortunately, we don't modify that specifically for individual areas. We take it as the federal government has calculated it from their census data, and we've just made that one component. Their goal was to try and come up with a single environmental factor to describe these different demographic variables, but they didn't, again, because they're using national data, fine tune it for each area. It's tuned according to the population numbers and the percentages reported in the census, but they don't adjust the factors. In other words, the weighting based on different geographies. The only thing I can tell you is the good news is that's not a single factor that has to come into consideration. It's just one of several.
Well, and I think the point here is with environmental justice is you can't, if you're building a road, you can't run it through a poor minority population, essentially, because you think that it's going to be easier to run it through there. You have to make the logical decision. That's what environmental justice is about, is that just because a certain person lives in a community that is disadvantaged doesn't mean that you can run the major freeway right through the middle of their community. And so that's where the term environmental justice came, because when they were building all the freeways, I think it was, and this is just layman's perspective, I think it was all the freeways, you know, when they started building all of them, they may have seen some injustice going on there in the 60s and 70s. John's probably raising his eyebrows back there thinking, whoa, Holly, you're way off. But I think that's what it is.
No, you are correct. And we use this in a variety of ways. And I'm sure Laura can speak to how this is used on the transit side. What we have to take this data for is, again, for federal requirements to evaluate all the projects that come through the MPO that are receiving federal funding to ensure that no projects are going to disproportionately impact any communities unfairly. And so that is kind of where they come up with the environmental justice, is we're looking at the environment to say, okay, is there a neighborhood where if we build this project, it's going to increase their commute times or increase their susceptibility to GHG pollution, or is going to perhaps sever a neighborhood from other resources like access to grocery stores or make it longer to get to those resources. So those are the factors that we have to consider, at least on the transportation funding side of capital projects when it comes through the MPO for federal funding.
And for something like a senior center, I think it's nothing short of a miracle that Monument has their own senior center now, because they don't have access to all of the grants and resources that the Fountain area had, or that the city of Colorado Springs had for where their senior center is. And so if you look at the map, when someone from Falcon asks for a senior center, it's a little bit harder to find those grants and resources to build a senior center because of these types of maps. So because they have to be in a certain urban block to qualify for some grants.
Well, then I like Mayor Stone said,
Thanks for.
Thompson said, these maps, man, have really got you going which way, what, but that way. Okay, and there's really no clarification at all. And then the more you look into it, you have more questions and you have the questions to answer.
I think a good resource is our state demographer's office, right? And as well as PPACG. This is very complicated. I agree. And I also will just say it is a little bit frustrating how the census went about in 2020 and how some of these changes occurred because it does make things confusing. But the state demographer's office, if you're looking at it from a local level, is a great resource because they do a great job kind of translating this information. And we at the MPO level and at PPACG, we are in that direct weeds, I would say, that the federal government has us kind of walk through. And so that's why it kind of looks from my perspective as well, complicated because we're having to follow the federal guidelines as with our grants, as Andy mentioned. So I think, use us as a resource. I wouldn't say I'm the expert, but Will is, but use us as a resource. Most of your towns and municipalities have to have a Title VI plan in place to receive federal funding. You may not be directly associated with that Title VI plan or know much about it, but we are a great resource because we continuously have to work through these different policies and requirements with our grants. So feel free to reach out to us, and we can always be your phone a friend for these types of things. So I'm asking the board, though, today to approve the updates to our Title VI plan that align with the requirements of FTA and FHWA.
What would the board like to do with item 5B?
I'll move adoption of and approval of the resolution approving Title VI and limited English proficiency plans.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Roland?
One that really convey again, we're not inside the border and it just still ticks me off. Anyway. That's my complaint.
Mayor Dixon, your mic is on. Did you have oh, you just can't reach it. Okay.
I do want to say one thing, Mayor Thompson, at the board workshop, I mentioned that we may need to make adjustments because how the process works is you send this into FTA and after it's signed, and then they can say, hey, you need to make adjustments. However, today, just before the meeting, I did get concurrence in saying, yes, that this meets the requirements. And so we should be good to go. It does have to go through a final review once it is signed.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
All right. We have our formal objection over there. Thank you very much. All right, that takes us on to item 5C. Hopefully we can quickly get through the ARPA funding distribution. Jody?
Good morning again. Yes, very quickly, all the information you have in the packet, I'll just highlight a couple areas and then we can move forward. So as you all are familiar, across the U.S., there were American Rescue Plan Act funding packages provided at a variety of municipal, state, on community levels. However, there was a portion set aside specifically through the through the Administration on Community Living, specifically for area agencies on aging across the United States. We received our portion through our state administrators, the State Unit on Aging. Our portion totals $2,345,927.93. After our indirect expenses are calculated, that provides for $1,818,797.92 for distribution across our region. Because the intent of the ARPA funds are for searching for infrastructure projects, and due to the community and collaborative nature of these funds, a region-wide NOFA, or Notice of Funding Availability, was advertised. We also reached out to all of our direct and current contracted providers. We'd been notifying them of these funds, and so they were aware of that. We also let them know when that NOFA was released. Just as requested, we met with current contractor providers and other organizations who were interested in applying to answer any questions, confirm projects that may fit under the allowable expenses and that kind of thing. Our Regional Advisory Council, TRS, that's the Technical Review Subcommittee, their role is to review funding opportunities and distribution. They met with staff on Wednesday, May 25th, and reviewed the overall requests, which were $1,804,126, which did leave a balance. Now, at the time we were going through the process, there was the discussion of the debt ceiling clawback of unallocated funding, and so we chose, due to that potential, to go ahead and find other opportunities so that we could come with up with 100% allocation, which we did by placing that balance of $14,671.92 into one other project. There was also an invalid request that we moved that balance into another project. So the worksheet before you does show 100% of allocation. We have since been notified that these funds are not going to be part of the debt ceiling budget process, and so we are well ahead of the game, and we do feel that these funds, most of these projects, will actually be completed within the next fiscal year and a half, and so even well in advance of the first deadline, which is allocation by September 30th of 2024. We feel that most of these projects, based on the applications, will actually be completed. And so we'll be very excited to be able to share some of these projects for you. So if there are any questions, I am happy to take those now.
Any questions on the presentation? Roland, your mic is still on.
Oh, I apologize.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just didn't want to miss you if you had a question. All right, any questions, any hands raised online? Okay, seeing no questions, what would the board like to do with action item 5C?
I move approval of item 5C. John.
Dean, a second.
Okay, and before we vote, I would like to note that Commissioner Brimmer is now online. So thank you, Commissioner Brimmer, for joining us. So all in favor of item 5C, we have a motion and a second. Please vote by saying yes.
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 Any opposed? All right, seeing none, that motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We will be notifying our applicants and having these ready for contract within the next week or so. So thank you very much. We'll start with the July 1 contract period. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and congratulations to everybody on those funds. That takes us on to item 6, information items. Item 6A, Fountain Freight Rail Yard, John Liasatos and Gary Barber.
And a cast of thousands. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Directors. Just to keep us on track, I'll be very brief in my sort of opening statements, and then we'll hand it off to Gary here. For over a decade, Fountain and others around the region, the Colorado Springs Chamber, Colorado Springs Colorado Springs Utilities, El Paso County, have been working on a rail yard project. Gary's going to give you the background. So it would be a waste of time for me to try to do that. So we'll let Gary do that. At the end of the background, he'll get to where we are today, where they have a trackage agreement and they're ready to sort of move forward and start making some applications for federal funding for design and beyond that, the next phase of construction. And the item today is to sort of chat about, one, fill you in where they've been, but now moving forward, how they want to move forward, and having a discussion, an open discussion about using the PPACG process to maybe go after the future grants. Now, again, it's just discussions at that point. We could have the discussions, and at the end of the day, it might be seen that it might be better for a jurisdiction to do it or some other sort of entity. But that's the reason for the item in front of you today. And with that, I'll hand it off to Gary, and I don't know if you want to introduce Steve, and Steve is part of yours.
Sure. Okay. Great. My name is Gary Barber. I'm the project manager for this public-private partnership rail project. With me today are Steve Weiner of Levy Companies and Steve Mulliken of Mulliken Weiner Maynard Gillivette. So they are part of our partnership. Let me just say at the beginning that I'm glad I got to follow the people with the maps. This will look a lot easier than that did. So, and a lot more fun. Everybody loves trains, right? John already said this really was a vision in the city of Fountain for many years. It's very much tied to Fort Carson. What you see in this graphic is two things that are important. Back in first let me say, Kimberly Bailey, I know you're watching on TV. Sorry you couldn't be with us today, but Kimberly has been a real force to move this project forward. We formed a public-private partnership back in 2018, includes El Paso County, Colorado Springs, the Chamber Economic Development Corporation operates as our fiscal agent, City of Fountain and the Levy Company all teamed up to try to make this work. We signed a memorandum of understanding in 2018, completed a feasibility report in 2019 to make sure we had no fatal flaws from an environmental or conceptual point of view. And then moved forward in 2021 and 22, pursuing federal grants. We received a grant to do the feasibility study from the Economic Development Administration. So that document is now record. And then we needed to have, because you can see on the graphic.
And Steve,
Oh.
you need to be more descriptive in your text.
Okay, so I'm wearing a blue jacket. No, just kidding. So down on the south end of our urban area, actually in El Paso County, but part of the master plan for City of Fountain, is a tract of about 3,000 acres. It's owned by Edward C. Levy Company. They also are Schmidt Construction here locally. So it's a mining quarry of about 400 acres of a quarry and 2,000 acres of vacant land that's flat. It is between the Colorado Springs Utilities Clear Springs Ranch Power Complex. So there's a gas peaking power plant there and the Ray Nixon coal-fired power plant. That coal-fired power plant receives its coal by a rail track. And that track is served by both Class 1 railroads in our neighborhood, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe and Union Pacific Southern Pacific. So it's quite unusual to have an existing spur with dual service that could then be extended and essentially provide a second rail access for Fort Carson. So let's go to the next slide. Over the years and in working with, and we work very much hand in hand with Fort Carson on this, is this concept that they have a single rail spur. And the project, in my experience, began in about 2014 with the base realignment and closure process. Fort Carson was being considered for closure because it doesn't have the redundancy of two rail spurs, and that really hinders deployment. And so their mission is to be able to deploy to other parts of the world, and that single track is a difficult limitation for them. In the process, we applied at one point for Defense Communities Infrastructure Plan.
And again, that was in concert with the city of Fountain. And what we learned, and this letter from General McFarland states, the existing rail spur is right by B Street and it crosses over 85, 87, I-25, Fountain Creek. And it has a series of places where the rail could be put out of service fairly simply by a terrorist or someone that wanted to stop the deployment. So having a second rail spur is really important. But the project also, and that's why the Chamber and Economic Development Corporation are the hub of our wheel, is it creates potentially 5,000 or 6,000 new jobs. And so it's tastes great, less filling, if you're old enough to remember that advertisement. Is it a rail project to support Fort Carson and its deployment? Yes. Is it an initiative that could create 5,000 plus jobs for our regional community? Yes. And so we're doing both things. And let's go to the next slide, please. So the piece we needed to put in place was a trackage agreement with Colorado Springs Utilities to use that existing spur. In the utilities recent 2022 or 2021 environmental electric integrated resource plan, they will close that coal plant for coal no later than 2030. So somewhere between now and in the next 5 years, that track will no longer be taking coal deliveries. So in order to use that existing spur and extend that out to Fort Carson, we have now got a trackage agreement, an agreement between the levy property and an agreement which is reciprocal. We'll use their track. The track that goes to Fort Carson will also be a public asset that serves Fort Carson. So the trackage agreement is a reciprocal granting of easements to bring that track to Fort Carson and onto Fort Carson. And again, every time the garrison commander, or we have a new commander at Fort Carson, we got to brief them and bring them up to speed. But their public works group out there has been in this process from the beginning. So it's very much a team effort with Fort Carson. The question we have now is coming up this fall, Federal Rail Administration will have another sequence of grants. In kind of working with our project partners, we came to the conclusion that John's expertise far exceeds my own and your all's capacity to at least understand and apply for grants at the federal level may be the best place to have this conversation and become an applicant, as we have done before through the Chamber and Economic Development group, is to work through PPACG. So the request today is not a decision as much as it is a courtesy, if you will, to ask your executive director and John's team to work through the process with us to see if it is appropriate that you all be the applicant. And it felt to me like, as much as you have going on, which I have a greater appreciation of after the last couple of presentations, to take a lot of your staff time and leadership time to be appropriate and courteous, we wanted to come and just ask permission to do that. So it's really, that's why it's an information item. We'd like to continue the dialogue we've started. We've kept PPACG and the staff here informed as we've progressed. Now we're really with a trackage agreement, which is fully ratified as of May 30th, 2023, about 2 weeks ago, to come here and say, can we start to work with your team and try to put this rail project into these federal grants going forward? Glad to answer questions if you have.
Yeah, I think another part of this that potentially affects PPACG is the widening of I-25, and we are restricted at that overpass of that freeway, of that train on southbound, well, no, northbound, I-25 there, right south of Colorado Springs before Fountain, where we cannot widen it there because of the railroad spur that's there. And so I think that's something that long-term we really need to be thinking about too.
Sure. So having this project in place would actually help us then help CDOT to make those improvements on I-25, including that existing bridge that's out there. Sure.
Right.
And we so appreciate the update a lot. We've had a lot of conversations about this recently, and we're doing our due diligence to see if this is something we could take on. But we wanted to bring it to you all just to brief you and let you know that we're having these conversations and get a bit of a head nod where if it ends up being us as the applicant, that you would be okay with that. We would brief you on that later on, or there might be other entities. It could be El Paso County. might be a better fit, and we're just kind of trying to figure out who the best fit as the actual applicant might be. I would say, regardless of who the applicant is, we should all get behind this as a region for these highly competitive grants that are out there that Gary mentioned. You know, FRA is going to have, I forget what it stands for, but it's a CRISI grant is what the next step would be. And this being a multi-jurisdictional project with huge benefits, positive benefits to Fort Carson and for the job creation aspects, that if we wanted to get behind one big IIJA grant application here in the short term, this would be the one to do that as a multi-jurisdictional level of support, and getting in our federal delegation and other delegation members to get behind it as well.
Okay, are there any questions from anybody in the audience or online? Commissioner Hickey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. As Transportation Commissioner, I just wanted to say I appreciate you considering this option. I don't know who's the best applicant, but it's certainly a project worth all of us leaning into because of the economic development benefits and ultimate improvements to the transportation system all around.
Thank you, Commissioner Hickey. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I've been working on this with the same team and Gary for the last several years, and so I've been very supportive of this, and I think the county has. So whatever makes the most sense in terms of entity for supporting and being the lead or put the name on it, I think we should do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Williams.
I think as a community, we have a long history of supporting Fort Carson and our military bases. And I think that what this does is this really helps Fort Carson at the end of the day, so that when we line up our missiles on those trains, they're not going through the neighborhoods. They're staying right on the base. And I think that's really important as a safety feature, as well as the wonderful transportation upgrades we'll get from it. So I'm in support of pursuing this.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mayor Thompson, in general, this seems to me like a favorable thing to do, but I kind of want to know what Fountain's take on this is. I don't know if this affects you very much, but I think railroads are sometimes a vexing concern for your constituents.
I don't see this being something. I think being excited about the high-paying jobs this can bring to our community. I think there's another railroad project going on that would have greater impact in our community besides this one.
Okay, thank you. It seemed like a good thing to ask
Yes.
right up front. So
No, I
good.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? I think I'm getting the feel of the room, and it's kind of hard to get a feel of people online, but that everybody's comfortable with moving forward with this.
Yeah, so sounds good. And we'll be back to update on, once we make a decision, who the applicant's going to be, whether it's the county, PPACG, or another entity. I think we probably need to decide fairly soon, sometime this summer. Applications are due by the end of this year. So, yeah, John, anything to?
Madam Chair, if I might, and yeah, I think one of the major considerations is the match for the actual application. Obviously, PPACG, we do not have the match. So as we discuss that, if we find the match through like a jurisdiction or a private party or a combination thereof, that is makes it clean. If it is something that we want to go after the DOLA Loma grant, we did find out as of last week, PPACG cannot be a recipient of that. And it is, since they're state funds, that would be a hit to any jurisdiction that is not detabered. I'm not sure what the more politically correct term is.
And that's El Paso County.
Yeah, so El Paso County, if you were to do it, and you did get the Loma grant, that would mean that there would be other things that you would have to forego. But there are other jurisdictions within the region that are detabered. So that's all part of the whole discussion and how we figure this all out. But I just wanted to let everybody know it's not a simple sort of like, oh, well, why wouldn't you want to? I think everybody wants to. Again, this is a great project. Checks all the boxes, supports our military, not only jobs, but great paying jobs, right? So this is something that we all want to support, but the devil's in the details of sort of figuring that out. And that's why, again, Gary and the other partners think that maybe PPACG is the best candidate to sort of at least have these initial discussions, because even if it is somebody else down the line, I think we're sort of joined at the hip at this point. So even if it's somebody else as the applicant, we're still going to be involved and volunteer our resources.
I think we're in the same shirt.
Yeah, we twinsies. So I just wanted to make sure everyone's clear. We're going to make sure that we do all of our due diligence, and when we come back to you, hopefully everything's going to be worked out. So it's something that you can sort of pick at, and no matter how many layers of the onion you get to, we'll still have the answers, and we've thought of it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know Kimberly Bailey is online. As of yesterday, she had laryngitis really severe and wasn't able to speak. I don't know if that is any different this morning, Kimberly, or not. If
Kimberly, if you can hear us, tap twice.
I know. Oh, goodness.
Okay, they're so joined at the hip. One's wearing the blazer, the other one's wearing the tie.
Yeah, there you go.
He's better dressed. He's better dressed than I am. Yeah, here you go. I'll give you the coat bag after.
So can I ask one question of Councilmember Donaldson and Avila? Is this something that Colorado Springs Utilities could apply for, where you're decommissioning that plant down there?
I doubt it, but I can, I'll check in with
Okay.
the CEO and check on that.
Are your grants detapered in Colorado Springs?
Well, we're talking, that was a question about utilities.
Well, it's the Colorado Springs Utilities portion of
And,
it.
and no, I don't think they are for the city.
Okay.
If
Right.
Colorado Springs Utilities could apply for the grant, Yolanda, I don't know as if that's something they do, or
Yeah,
if they're detapered, or how that, and John's kind of
Just the
grounding.
way it sounds, I doubt that's something that the utilities wants to take on. Especially if they're not going to be using the railroad any longer. But that is not set in stone either. So we will have to see how state regulation of our utilities continues. If, there's potential things could happen where that power plant maybe stays longer. Just depends on how things are. Right, our energy needs and the state's energy needs.
Right. Let me say unequivocally, the whole purpose of this is to not in any way disrupt the current or any future operation of Colorado Springs Utilities, and that's embedded in that trackage agreement.
Correct, and that's, the agreement is structured that way, and at utilities, we've looked at that, and as more than I do.
Right. Yeah, we're not brother-in-law to anybody here, so that's.
And I know the one thing I've learned as mayor is if you're not sure of something, be quiet. So I'm not saying a lot here.
I thought we were more vested in it, so I think we need to get clarity. Yeah.
We will figure it out, but we just want to know, if we
Well,
want to use this piece to keep moving forward.
I don't think there's been any change in what's already been agreed to today. Nobody's saying anything different than that. It's just utilities has entered into agreements with this organization for use of the railroad, and that's beneficial to both. However, that won't change, but just the future of the power plant down there, Nixon, there's a plan, but plans can always change. So it's not 100% certain. Very few things are exactly what's going to happen. We do have a plan, though. We're planning to follow it.
Right, and it's key to see in this graphic shows you that you need both right of ways to put the track to Fort Carson. And that's really the basis of the agreement, nothing beyond that. And nothing that would interrupt in any way coal deliveries to the power plant or in any way impinge on the operation there. So that's a really important component, and that's why the agreement is memorializing all of those things. So that's really.
Would you say it's fair to characterize that if this project moves forward, both from the rail and the roadway component, that increases utility of the city of Colorado Springs asset? And so that way, whatever they end up doing, if it's continuing to be a coal plant or something else, they have more options down the road.
Yeah, and whatever the baseline is, our absolute commitment is to not make anything worse. So that's.
And this is, this is just not for coal. This is not just for Fort Carson. There are other forms of freight that this could be used for. Is that correct?
Right, and my economic development administration feasibility study is only about 240 pages, and in there, it talks very specifically about the creation of jobs, and especially the idea that we have this really high quality workforce of honorably discharged service members wanting to stay here in El Paso County and having 5,000 jobs potentially that we could put them into. And for example, in the back of that report are letters of recommendation from all the, participants, but also from Pikes Peak State College saying, we will build special education programs to create a workforce once you understand what the jobs are. But mission number one, phase one only, is to get that spur to Fort Carson. And then from there, a lot of benefits roll out. So that's including some opportunities for CDOT to have to not deal with the existing rail bridge. As soon as you got a second rail place to deploy from, and one frankly that doesn't go up into Kelker Junction and close to downtown and that sort of thing. So don't want to get lost in the details. It's a good thing. We're only having a conversation, and we very much appreciate your support.
It's great.
I think Kimberly Bailey has tapped in the chat, so I don't know if that's anything we need to chat about.
Oh, thank you. She said, I still have no voice. I appreciate the regional support and state transportation. Who else can read that? Commission. Okay, advocate. As always. Okay. All right. All right. Great. Thank you. All right, that takes us on to item 7. Items A through G are reports that are included in the packet, and that takes us on to item H, the CDOT monthly update.
Members, I'd like to start with I-25 Fillmore to Garden of the Gods project. We will be advertising this project tomorrow and hopefully start the construction by fall of this year and finish the project by fall of 2025. It is a 2-year project. I'd like to also go over US 24 overlay project from Chipeta Park to Divide. Because of the recent rainstorm and not enough having a nighttime temperature, we will be start paving by end of this month. So, and we're also working on guardrail and ADA curb ramp, from May to up to now. So there is that US 24 curb correction project that I believe Park County Commissioner, talked about earlier today. We are actually trying to fix that curve. So you've seen that. For Mamsey project, as you're aware, because of the recent rainstorm, the split elevation between northbound and the southbound got undermined. So we're trying to actually get rid of some of that concrete barriers and actually place type 3 guardrail. So that's why you're seeing lane closure. It's an emergency lane closure for yesterday morning to perhaps today. So I don't have that updated yet. So, and State Highway 285 and State Highway 9 in Fair Play project. We got the contractor on board. I think they just started to do the construction. So it is on schedule to finish fall of 2024. So. And State Highway 115 project, we are actually on schedule, and perhaps maybe on this weekend, we have a one-way traffic towards the southern end of project limit. So we need to do some cement treatment on, beds, soil area. So lastly, Shane wants to convey this. Just want to say, thank you for participating in Region 2 trash cleanup day. We actually collected about 2,600 bags throughout the region, and for PPACG area, about 600 bags. So thank you all for participating in that. So does anyone have any question regarding projects?
Commissioner Elson.
No, I just wanted to add something on State Highway 67, close to Westcliff. If you're planning on being someplace on time, leave a lot earlier. I found that out this morning. And then Also, it's something that you need to think about, and CDOT will be having it come out in the end of August or first part of September. Do not plan on going to Breckenridge from Colorado Springs for a week because Highway 9 will be closed for a bridge replacement just north of Fairplay. Or just north of Alma. The detour will take you through Buena Vista and Leadville. So, instead of a half hour, it's going to be 2.5 hours.
Okay. All right, that's really nice of you to say don't go to Breckenridge. I'm sure they're thrilled with that.
Yeah.
All right, okay, big elephant in the room. We have massive potholes everywhere from this rain. Do you have a pothole hotline, a something? Because I know Highway 85 in Fountain was bad before the rains, and now it's really bad, really, really bad. And I'm sure there's other areas, around that the massive amount of rain, 5 inches of rain, it's just going to take some of that stuff out. What's the best thing for people to do?
I'm really not sure, but we do have a maintenance group that actually constantly, going out on the highway, and they actually patch. Because of the, rainstorm, it is getting a lot worse, so.
Yeah.
Yes, and you cannot patch if it's wet.
Right.
That is also true.
Okay. I think on the CDOT website, there is a pothole hotline or something. Maybe we can get that out to everybody, Andy, so we can, everybody can have it on the tip of their finger on their computer when they start getting complaints about, and you're like, that's not us, that's CDOT. Okay. All right. Well, good luck with the potholes in the next few weeks because you're going to need it. And thank you for the update. I know the Mamsit project, yeah, that was rough. That was rough yesterday in Fountain because everybody was having to get off and go through Highway 85. And, but it got opened eventually in the evening. So thank you. That was interesting. I actually drove up and I'm like, oh my gosh, those huge cement things are all falling off the freeway down in the road below. So that was interesting. All right. Anybody else CDOT questions or comments? We do, oh. Okay, that's okay. All right. Statewide Transportation Advisory Committee update, Commissioner Williams.
I was unable to attend, and I think Dick Yelsner was unable to attend, but we have 2 updates. So we're going to have City Councilman Dave Donaldson, if he can tell us what happened, and then also on the 1101 committee, if y'all have any updates yet about the TPR boundaries. And I don't know, Dick, if you have some of those.
And I'm going to hand it off to John Elias Santos. Yeah, I attended the meeting. John gave the update for us, and it was so effective. I think I'm gonna repeat that performance here.
I usually hand it off to him too.
Yeah, he's very good at this.
Okay. So the process right now at the stack is to revisit the funding formulas, and so there was discussions at the last meeting on how we should move forward with that. And again, I think there's that sort of urban-rural sort of question, and how are things going to be different now than they were 4 years ago, right? 4 years ago, we had the same discussions, nothing much has changed. So why are they going to be different now? I think is sort of the underlying tension of, is something going to break free? So that's the best I can do for a stack report with a short amount of time. And then the 1101 boundary discussion.
There was an initial meeting, and that's the study that CDOT is coordinating this summer, has to report out by this fall on adjusting possibly the transportation planning region boundaries based on the guidelines that were in the legislation that was passed, 1101. The initial meeting was held last week, and I was traveling back from a conference, so I missed that meeting along with a couple other members. Oh, and Commissioner Elsner, you're on there.
Yes, I was on that meeting. It is kind of interesting. I always say that, leave us alone. A lot of the TPRs say leave us alone, but there are 2 TPRs that are fighting quite a bit. Well, I think they've got 4 or 5 meetings planned where they'll go to the communities and talk to everybody. I know one was up in Craig. I don't know if that's been finalized yet. I'll be getting emails and I'll send them to you, or you should be getting them too. But, it's an interesting discussion, trying to figure out how to do this. Of course, the legislation said we still have to have the same number of rural TPRs. That's then when you start getting into the question is, can CDOT define rural the way most of us define rural? And that is always a challenge, but it'll be interesting to see. And then the final report has to be out by, I think, November.
Andy, if you could just CC me on those meeting dates so I could listen in, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Will do. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
All right, thank you. That takes us to Legislative Committee report. Mayor Dixon just left the room. We'll skip that and come back. How's that?
Sure. We can wait till Mayor Dixon's back. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
already. Executive Director's
And just
report?
real briefly, I've got two very brief items and then one a little bit longer item. Just a reminder for our next meeting in July 12th, we're going to be in Woodland Park. That's our first traveling meeting of the summer. I'll send out details on that, but we'll need to find out if folks are interested in carpooling, van pulling up there. But it's going to be in the Youth Pass Cultural Center. I think it's a former elementary school and now the home of the Woodland Park Chamber of Commerce and a couple other offices. Was up there yesterday for an infrastructure summit meeting all day, and we think it'll work out okay. We'll make sure we've got the hybrid technology set up so folks that are zooming in for it will be able to hear and see what's going on. But we'll really encourage in-person participation up there. I think that'll be more effective, but understand that folks may not be able to travel as well. But yeah, appreciate City of Woodland Park stepping up and agreeing to find a spot to host us for the meeting in July. So more details to come. Other item, just real briefly, if you have activities, special events within your jurisdiction that you want us to promote through our social media and other avenues, let us know. Jared will be helping to get those out there on our social media sites and so forth. We've heard about a handful of activities already, so just keep them coming and we'll keep pushing them out. And then finally, wanted to mention that we've been having some conversations with some jurisdictions around a federal grant that we may be applying for in July around traffic safety. It's called Safe Streets and Roads for All. And I think the application period is coming up early July 10th. City of Colorado Springs, I think, is doing their own thing, but other jurisdictions were interested in moving in this direction as well. And in terms of coming up with a safety plan, based on that plan, there are federal grants, discretionary grants out there that you all could then go after to actually start making those improvements that are needed to improve traffic safety. So we think it's a really worthy effort. I think the grant would be between 200,000, 250,000, somewhere in that. Yeah, okay. The one question was how to line up the local match for that. And there's an opportunity. John kind of referred to this earlier about the local assistance match program that's run by DOLA that we as an organization, PPACG, can't apply for it, but local jurisdictions can. And I think we're going to have a meeting with the City of Woodland Park and some others later this afternoon. Woodland Park has expressed interest in maybe being the applicant on our behalf for both the local match at the state, but then that also means they'd have to be the federal applicant as well. So I just wanted to let you know about that. You may be hearing from your staff members to see if your jurisdiction is interested in engaging and being part of this grant application as well. We think it's a good effort, but didn't want to decide that today as far as who's in or who's out. But you'll hear from your staff members if they want to get on board with this or not, and fairly soon since the application period is coming up pretty quickly. But anything else, John, Danelle, that I missed?
No, I just would like to stress that jurisdictions would need to opt in. We're not going to put in an application, go down this road, and then come back and say, hey, well, this is the recommendations for jurisdiction X, and then the jurisdictions X is like, well, wait a minute, we don't support those projects anymore. That's not something we were looking to do. So it is by no way is anyone going to be included or represented in this study unless you opt in. If you don't opt in, you're going to be specifically excluded. So that way, no one can come back down the line and have any sort of issue. So you'll need to send a letter of some sort. Could just be an email, but you need to opt in.
You know, I think several communities have opted in, but the
Mhm.
concern was the match for some of the smaller communities.
Right,
So
and we
I
think
think
that-
that's where the DOLA will help.
Yeah, and we think that state source is a really good source to help meet that requirement, but yeah, we just got to make sure we put all the pieces in place. And I should have mentioned, our involvement will be, we'll provide some support and convening and all that, but we'll also provide a letter of support. So wanted to make sure that folks were aware of that as well. It fits in with all of our work plan, our strategic plan, the work we're doing with Drive Smart Colorado, and all the other issues we've mentioned around traffic safety concerns across the region. So we will be offering up a letter of support if there are 2 or more jurisdictions interested in moving forward, or even if it's just one, we would do that. Okay.
All right. All right, yes.
I have a question, the SB 108. That clarify it, or is it a temporary reduction in property tax, or is it's been signed by the governor, but
I think we're going to have a discussion after we adjourn this meeting on Senate Bill 108, and I can go through everything with you.
Yes, as soon as we convey, we're going to take what, Brad, 5-10 minute break for everybody, and then we'll come back and Dick will be facilitating the SB 108 meeting.
okay, great, thank you.
Okay. All right. We're going to go back to item K, the legislative committee report, Mayor Dixon and Commissioner Elsner.
The report is in the package. I'd say if you have any questions, let us know.
We're just going to enjoy the next 7 months.
She didn't say
Well,
that.
I think we're already maybe trying to identify maybe some strategies to do, we're kind of in this lull period to kind of take these strategies on and so we're ready for the next go round.
Yeah, and then the group isn't meeting again until, what did you end up?
Can't remember off the top of my head, I can't remember when the next.
We have
September?
definitely September, possibly
Okay.
August.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was the agreement.
All right, thank you. Okay, so enjoy your Monday mornings for a few weeks, huh? Yeah. All right, are there any other member entity announcements? Okay, our next meeting is in Woodland Park, like Andy just said, and seeing nothing else, we are adjourned.